This is the sermon for June 19th, 2022. The Israelites said, "Why didn't God let us die in comfort in Egypt, where we had lamb stew and all the bread we could eat? You've brought us out into this wilderness to starve us to death." God said to Moses, "I'm going to rain bread down from the skies for you. The people will go out and gather each day's ration. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they have gathered, it will turn out to be twice as much as their daily ration." The people of Israel went to work and started gathering, some more, some less. But when they measured out what they had gathered, those who gathered more had no extra, and those who gathered less weren't short. Moses said to them, "Don't leave any of it till morning." But they didn't listen, and a few of the men kept back some of it until morning. It got wormy and smelled bad. Moses said, "This is what God was talking about. Tomorrow is a day of rest, a holy Sabbath to God. Whatever you plan to bake, bake today." On the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather anyway, but they didn't find anything. Well, I also have a quote. This is from John Aston. "Every moment turns out, upon closer examination, to be a complete free fall into endless mystery and depth." So the Exodus 16 passage is a snapshot of life. It could be our life here today. It could be. Being weak and frail, we want to stay in slavery in Egypt, where, as remembered during the suffering of the wilderness, we had everything we needed. So this is the definition of nostalgia. We remember the past as rosier than it really was, if we're honest. So the Israelites had everything they needed in Egypt except freedom from slavery. I doubt that they had enough to eat. I really don't think so. I certainly don't think that they had all the lamb stew that they could eat. I really don't think so. So, the Israelites in the wilderness had the possibility of new life. Yes, they encountered suffering. They had the possibility of being faithful to God in leaving slavery behind and risking what is new. Along with it, they encountered a lot of difficulty, and we do as well. The risks of life are part of every day, even in the modern world. Do you want to stay in your current circumstances with your life just as it is? Or are you willing to risk an adventure? And to risk the adventure with God and with community, not just alone. I've been learning from my recent kayak adventures that I can do things I never could do before, and I find that out with surprise and delight. There are challenges in life, that's for sure. On a recent trip, I started out more timid, and as the adventure went on, I got bolder as I did everything. And I tried more things and found out I could do more things. It feels good to be stretched and to find that I can do it. And I think that's a good illustration for life. We are whole human beings. Our physical feeds into our mind and our spirit, and the mind and the spirit feed into the physical, and all three are all tied in together. They're all connected. Yeah. I know many of you have gone through real challenges, treatments from cancer or rehab where you had to work very, very hard to come back. Some of you have been challenged by grief, at times not knowing if you would survive, but you did because you're here. And the ones I know have returned to some joy in the new life. It's not the same as before, definitely not the same, but there it is, a new form of life. I've been completely captured by this book called The Sabbath by Abraham Joshua Heschel. I did not know all of this about the Sabbath, and the more I read, the more I understand in my mind, the more I find it full of mystery and wonder. And it's revealing new things about God in my understanding. And so Just to review a little bit, humans are pretty good at mastering stuff and things. Our work is all about things and making improvements for the world sometimes in things, the work that we do. We're good at bettering our homes, our towns. Sometimes we better the body in ways. It's all material stuff. Sometimes we fix or improve church buildings, and that's again about stuff and not about time, which only God controls. And humans think that because they control stuff pretty darn well, they can control time as well. That isn't the case. That isn't the case. And we're learning that. Those of us who have grown older and wiser are definitely learning that. We can't and we don't control time. When there's a near serious accident or something is fatal, or the pandemic for that matter, we learn that we don't control time, that is in God's hands. So if we only focus on stuff, maybe that's not the best idea. What if we honored God and Sabbath as a way of seeing ourselves within the flow of God's time? This is a new concept. God designed a work and rest pattern that we could step into. And as we step into the work and rest, 6 days and 1, as we step into that, we honor God, but mainly God honors us. The Sabbath arrives fully formed. We do not create it. We do not create it by following it and by our rituals. God gives it to us as gift, fully formed. That's why I told you last Sunday about the stories of Heschel's daughter Sylvia and how she and her mother felt transformed by the lighting of the candles and the saying of the blessings. And they would light the candles, they would begin the Sabbath at sundown, and then they would walk into the living room and out the west window. They would watch the rest of the evening fall. And I did that sometimes during the past week by allowing the beauty of sundown to fall around me. When I was working outdoors, I quit working and just let the quiet and the darkness fall around me. It was really a good experience. I tend, like many people, I live by the dictum that nothing will get done if I don't apply myself. And of course, I think of applying myself as full force. But in reality, that's a lie. Things will happen, even if I do not try to make them happen. That's a learning experience. There is a blessed balance in the 6 days of work and the 1 day of rest. Rest, which is filled with joy, celebration, holiness, and not exhaustion, and not a resentful, do I have to? We sound like teenagers. Do I have to not drive on the Sabbath? Do I have to not use my smartphone on the Sabbath? Do I have to read only something uplifting on the Sabbath? Can't I just read like I normally do? That's just it. Experiencing the Sabbath is experiencing a holy difference and not an earthly difference. We might say, what earthly difference would it make? Well, that's it. It's a holy difference. So we step into the stream of God's time, which is completely different. So we don't control any time, not even the 6 days. And so when we celebrate the 7th day, it reminds us that we don't control time in the 6 days either. We don't even really control life and stuff as much as we think we do in the 6 days. So when have we experienced full wonder? I think of standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon. I think of standing even on the top of the bluff at our little Espenshide forest by Rock City. I think of the wonder of kayaking with limestone walls rising 70, 80, 90 feet from the water, which I've seen in Mount Carroll area. When have you experienced wonder? When have you lit candles and it meant something special? The birthday of a grandchild maybe? Or a romantic dinner? Now some of us, may have been a while since that happened. When have you experienced wonder and maybe even the lighting of a candle? When has wonder been present in an ordinary moment for you? These are times worth pondering because they're about time. They're not about stuff, not really. When I experience quiet within in sitting meditation or walking meditation, I turn to holiness in the midst of my day, a holy moment. Well, what if we had that holy moment for a full day each week? What if? Would it help our awareness of God herself? What are the moments that fill you with wonder at the miracle of life in this world? What if it were a whole day and not just a moment? There's a phrase in the funeral liturgy that says, as we shrink before the mystery of life and death. It's part of a prayer. That's time bringing us up short. It's like stopping at the very edge before we fall into what? Every moment turns out, upon closer examination, to be a complete free fall into endless mystery and depth. That's that quote by John Aston. Christians prefer to build churches, cathedrals even, or to focus on improving the building. How often do we give a time and attention to the architecture of time? That's the difference. There's an architecture of things, and there's an architecture of time. Are we aware of that? We like pews bolted down to the floor, everyone in rows looking at the backs of others' heads. I had someone argue with me. No, I'm looking at you, not the backs of heads. What if we were in circles and we looked at one another? It would be vulnerable, but I think it would also welcome the Holy Spirit in ways that maybe we don't experience as much now. In a circle, we'd be able to see one another's faces, to have a more immediate sense of spirit in us, through us, around us. Most people would say, oh, I don't want to do that. That's too vulnerable. But are we willing for God to see us? Well, yeah, people say, because God doesn't judge. Well, what if as Christians we didn't judge one another? What if we weren't petty? What if we didn't look at how people are dressed, or how they're made up, or how they're, how they carry themselves? What if we didn't look at stuff, the material reality? What if we saw them through the eyes of God? What if we saw them through the eyes of love? What if we made that a normal part of our week? Faith is not a way out of the world, but of moving more deeply into the heart of the world, the wonder of the world, more deeply connecting and seeing earth and one another. Sabbath is the most delightful way of being within the world in a holy way. We're called to be in the world but not of the world. How does that sound? Would you like that? When have you loved without grasping or holding tightly? When have you loved with a detachment that is not impersonal or cold, but a holding loosely? Have you ever held something loosely and admired and been captured by it? That's how I feel right now with the idea of Sabbath. Have you loved without attachment? Have you loved without fear? There it is again. That's the adventure and that's the challenge. Can we love and hold in a way that frees us to acknowledge how the world is beautiful, but it's passing away? And in reality, it's not the world that's necessarily passing away, but more accurately, we are passing through the world in a way that is brief. In the whole scheme of things, it's quite brief. This is also in the graveside service in the funeral liturgy. In the midst of life, we are in death. What a phrase. Sabbath is a day of rest in the sense of harmony and peace, peace between human and human, peace within each person, peace with all things, peace with God. It is therefore a remembrance of paradise and the fulfillment of the commonwealth of heaven, or as we used to say, the kingdom of heaven. If we experience the harmony and peace of Sabbath, we experience the kingdom of heaven, the commonwealth of heaven. All week there is hope of redemption, and we keep that within our vision. But when the Sabbath is entering the world, we're touched by a moment of actual redemption. We step into redemption in a way that's very real and very immediate. The longing for the Sabbath all the days of the week is a form of longing for the eternal Sabbath all the days of our lives. The Sabbath points us in the direction of life with the divine, here in this world, and with whatever is after death. That is a great mystery. Would you like to enter into the mystery here and now, each week? Amen.